Are we ready to go?
Disappearance.
Okay. All right. So good afternoon. All right. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to AIM SAMRIDH launch event. This is an event about announcing a partnership. This event announces a partnership that is about blended financing to support ready-to-scale market solutions and innovations in the Indian healthcare ecosystem. It brings together Atal Innovation Mission in concert with the health vertical at the NITI Aayog, along with IPE Global, and SAMRIDH, which stands for Sustainable Access to Markets and Resources for Innovative Delivery of Healthcare, SAMRIDH, which is supported by the USAID and the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi. First of all, why does this event matter at this time? So if you look at the big picture, the question for our innovation ecosystem is that, can we deepen the investments for ideas that are deeper? And I think this is a demonstration of being able to do so using an instrument like the blended financing. Second, which by the way, the timing of this event is quite interesting because even the Union Budget last week announced some initiatives in blended financing. So this is an important idea. Without such ideas, a lot of firms that are very deserving of more money tend to go to places where they can get more money, and therefore with them goes ideas and IP and so on. I want to thank Mr. Ashwajit Singh, founder and MD of IPE Global, Ms. Veena Reddy, MD of USAID, Mr. Amitabh Kant, the CEO of NITI Aayog, and Dr. Sarwal, Rakesh Sarwal, the head of the health vertical, for joining us today. They have all been instrumental in getting to this point in a big way. I will let Mr. Singh talk about IPE Global right after me, but and Ms. Veena tell a bit about USAID. But I just want to say that our first initiative right after this launch today is going to be a joint call for proposal in the healthcare domain using SAMRIDH's blended financing framework. As you may remember, with every wave of the COVID pandemic, there was an enormous release of creativity. And there was always a question of what happened to all of that creativity after the wave was over. And I think instruments like this help us build capacity and resilience in healthcare systems based on such creativity. I also want to say very quickly about why this initiative is relevant for AIM at this point in time. If you look at Atal New India Challenge, where AIM runs challenges of the ministries to bring solutions to problems, such a challenge supports ideas to go up to TRL 5-6. This initiative today takes ideas further from there. So this is a very complementary to what we do. Also, we have never partnered as AIM with anybody where we experiment in financing. This is the first partnership of that kind. And it's important because it customizes financial support to firms that deserve it. So priority is also given to women entrepreneurs and Tier 2 and Tier 3 city, which is again where we are trying to expand. And last but not the least, along with this partnership, we have also launched today a white paper on blended financing to sort of put the framework out for further adoption, critique, whatever it is. So with those few words, let me, before I move on, let me also say that a huge thank you to IPE Global's team, Atal Innovation Mission's team, SAMRIDH's team, many of whom are in this room, for taking us in record speed from our first conversation to this point today. So with that, let me hand it over to Mr. Ashwajit Singh for his remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, Mr. Amitabh Kant, Dr. Sarwal, Mr. Chintan Vaishnav, Ms. Veena Reddy, Dr. Sangeeta Patel, Dr. Amit Shah, Neeta Gautam, and other colleagues at USAID, as well as NITI Aayog, and of course my colleagues at IP. We are very pleased to be here today on this very important occasion of the launch of this particular paper, as well as the scheme that we've got. We're all aware that at the onset of the pandemic, the health systems across the world totally collapsed, and they were overwhelmed by the kind of demand and the requirement that they had. India was no exception. However, the Indian government did come in with a fair amount of funding, a fair amount of innovation, and encouraged us to go through with this particular fight against COVID. We saw that, while the government of India did put in a lot of funds, and a lot of philanthropic organizations and development sector entities came in and funded the fight against COVID, the funds were not enough. We've seen that ever since then, that while we did have a lot of innovations, be it around masks, be it ventilators, be it hazmat suits, or any other things, and a lot of other technology, but they were not really being able to take off because of lack of funds. There are estimates which have shown that if you're looking at achieving the SDGs, you're looking at $2.5 trillion of money that needs to flow in to be able to meet the SDGs. Where does that money really come from? Of course, the governments are always there to support. The private sector is also required. The challenge that one's been seeing in this always has been that the objectives of the private sector, the commercial lending, is very often different from the objective of the government or some of the other agencies as well. Because while the private sector looks at some kind of mitigation against their risk, against their long gestation period, the government would want more impact. The government would want more reach, and would also want to further innovations as well. We've seen a number of startups in the health sector come up in India, and India today is perhaps one of the centers or the global hubs of innovation and startups. But more often than not, because of lack of support or sustainable support beyond a particular stage, the startups end up just being ideas. So SAMRIDH really comes in as a blended finance facility, and in fact, the very last meeting that I had before the physical lockdown in March 2020, along with Dr. Sangeeta, Dr. Amit, and some of the other colleagues, was to try and discuss about the SAMRIDH program as such. So over a period, this program evolved. We realized that there is a requirement of having some kind of a facility which acts as a catalytical support to be able to leverage commercial capital, in the absence of which you will not really be able to achieve our purpose. The FM, of course, has also recently touched upon blended finance as a concept. So that's how SAMRIDH came into program with USAID support. It was actually on top of an existing program of USAID, which is being managed by IP, which is Partnership for Affordable Healthcare Access and Longevity, called PEHL. So that's how it came into being. During the second phase, USAID in fact came in and directly gave in a substantial amount of additional grant as well to be able to help us fight against this COVID. But again, to be able to also leverage that money, because 25 odd million itself will not be enough. But if you are able to leverage that 25 million into, say, 250 million, that will have some kind of a meaningful purpose. So that's how SAMRIDH came into force. And over the last sort of year or so, we've seen invited a number of proposals under SAMRIDH. IP Global has in fact looked at funding about 20 odd proposals. There's been an element of grant. There's been an element of debt as well. There have been some innovative structures around credit enhancement, around social safety notes, around trying to make these innovations viable, or at least reach the next level of startups. We have specifically tried to look at addressing the issue around Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities, so that the benefit of this really reaches the vulnerable population. So that's been the objective. We are very pleased to, in fact, tie up with the Atal Innovation Mission and NITI Aayog, because when it comes to actually innovative financing instruments, USAID has always been the pioneer, be it municipal bonds, be it any kind of risk guarantees which the DCA in the past has done. But when it comes to actually any kind of innovations in India, any kind of out of the box thinking, any kind of thought leadership, it's always been NITI Aayog which has taken the lead. Especially, I mean, Mr. Amitabh Kant, we've seen right from God's own country to Incredible India to Make in India. Somebody who's always been encouraging startups and trying to have India being more independent as far as innovation is concerned. So once we got in touch with the Atal Innovation Mission, we were extremely happy to see the kind of response we got. And as Dr. Vaishnav just mentioned, in a record time of just about a month or so, I think we met in December, we've been able to come up with a blended finance paper, a policy paper which explains the entire concept. And at the same time, we are today ready to launch the scheme with along with the NITI Aayog. Just to let you know, we've got close to about 25 million of grant in this program, and we've already got letter of intent to the tune of about 250 million from various commercial banks who would be wanting to look at this. So we are going to be allocating part of that funding for calls for action here. So thank you so much once again, Amitabhji and the entire team, and of course USAID, who's always been there with new ideas and support. And we look forward to furthering this partnership and hopefully supporting a lot of deserving startups and providing them leveraging and funding in manners that they would otherwise not have been able to get. Thank you also to the IP team who's worked a lot with the Atal Innovation team to bring together this paper. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Singh, for those remarks. Let's next hear from Mr. Amitabh Kant, CEO at NITI.
Mr. Rakesh Sarwal, Mr. Chintan Vaishnav, Mr. Ashwajit Singh, Subhina Reddy, all the distinguished guests and participants. I'm truly delighted to be participating in this very unique initiative of Atal Innovation Mission, NITI Aayog, SAMRIDH Healthcare, USAID, all collaborating to support healthcare enterprises and innovators. Blended financing has the potential to redefine development finance by enabling partnerships, and partnerships that really unlock greater pools of affordable capital. And this can enable scaling up of businesses that deliver both financial and social returns. In the recent union budget of the finance minister, she has announced creation of thematic funds for blended finance to promote important sunrise sectors. And these are sunrise sectors such as climate action, deep tech, digital economy, pharma, and agri-tech. This reflects the government's recognition of innovative financing as an effective approach to build very sustainable businesses to address India's very pressing challenges. Given the disruptions triggered by the pandemic and its continued threat, there's no sector more important than healthcare that needs a very accelerated pace of reform and increased investments. And this is necessary to ensure that everyone has access to affordable and quality healthcare services. Innovation and market solutions with very viable business models can play a very significant role in rapidly reforming and revamping the health sector, augmenting its preparedness to respond to the COVID-19 crisis and all other health emergencies. Several innovations have come up to address healthcare challenges such as meeting the demand for medical oxygen, medical devices, oxygen concentrators, ventilators, health infrastructure, vaccines, and access to primary healthcare. Yet, most, if not all of these health startups struggle to scale up mainly due to lack of access to appropriate capital, restricting them to deliver large-scale and long-term impact. Private investors are mostly hesitant to fund projects in health domain owing to the inherent risks of this sector. risk of lower than expected returns, being capital intensive, having long gestation periods, having lengthy approvals and certification processes. And herein, I think, lies the unique opportunity to catalyze the space of healthcare innovation and entrepreneurship using innovative financing opportunities like blended finance that leverages philanthropic funding to reduce the risk for commercial investments. This approach enables increased private capital flows to fill the current financing gap in health sector and builds an enabling ecosystem for innovation adoption in the health ecosystem. The biggest health emergency of our times, the pandemic has not just laid bare the unique challenges and gaps in our health system, but has also highlighted the importance of investing in well-being and universal access to healthcare and also mental health care. At this juncture, we welcome the partnership between Atal Innovation Mission and USAID-supported SAMRIDH initiative. Our combined network and expertise will help ensure that high impact innovations are fully nurtured and effectively scaled up to promote health for all, particularly the vulnerable populations. So I'm truly delighted to be a part of this very unique initiative, and I wish it all the best and all success in the coming days. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir, for those encouraging words. With that, let's hear from Dr. Rakesh Sarwal, Additional Secretary Health of NITI.
Thank you, Chintan. Respected CEO NITI, Amitabh Kant sir, Mr. Chintan Vaishnav, Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission, Mr. Rasuljeet Singh, Veena Reddy, and other colleagues of IP Global and the Health and the NITI team. Healthcare has always been important, but COVID pandemic has pushed it at the top of our priority. It's become the center stage of our entire developmental efforts. In this sector, there are a lot of initiatives that have been taken from the government. The recent PM Ayushman Bharat Health Infrastructure Mission of 64,000 crore over 5 years being one of those initiatives. However, a large part of our healthcare spending is out of pocket and it is beyond what the government contributes, which is currently 1.3% of the GDP. So this gives us an opportunity to leverage private capital, market-based solutions, and high-tech innovative solutions in order to provide high-quality, accessible, affordable, and acceptable healthcare solutions. Now, it is here exactly where the startups score an edge in terms of their innovation, in terms of their creativity, market-based solutions, scalability, and bringing in technology. I'm really amazed to learn that recently, and as all of you would know, India saw 46 unicorns in 2021 alone, more than doubling the total number of unicorns to 90. Indian startups in 2021 raised a total of $42 billion, up from $11 billion in the previous year. And India has the third largest startup ecosystem in the world with 60,000 startups, 20% of which are really tech startups. So it is in this context that the health and education, which rank 5th in terms of the startups in the country, the other ones being fintech, e-commerce, SaaS, and marketplace startups, really deserve greater attention and greater support. The biggest challenge to startups is finance, as well as an ecosystem, support ecosystem, which this partnership very craftily and very intelligently it proposes to address. Given that our internet use is 35% in India, up from 5% a decade earlier, the mobile phone usage is 87%, as high as 87%, and regulatory and a very enabling regulatory and policy framework, this partnership has the potential to really scale up the potential that startups have in making a change in our health landscape. So it is in that context that the uniqueness that this partnership brings in terms of blended finance, a diverse team of multiple partners, including USAID, IP Global, NITI, as well as the ecosystem and the incubators, and the market-based solution possibility that it entails holds great hope in making a difference to market-based, consumer-focused, IT-based solutions in this sector. So I offer the services of the health vertical and the best wishes from our side for this very great partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarwal. We will certainly avail those services as we move forward. With that, let's move to Ms. Veena Reddy, Mission Director, USAID. Can you hear us, Veena?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yes, we can hear you. Please go on.
Great. Mr. Kant, Mr. Singh, Dr. Sarwal, Dr. Vaishnav, longstanding partners, distinguished participants, and guests from around the country. Good afternoon. Namaskaram. It is really a pleasure to be here today on behalf of the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID. I'm delighted to be here to celebrate the partnership between NITI Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission and USAID's SAMRIDH initiative. Reflecting, I feel like today we're facing overlapping health, humanitarian, environmental, and economic crises, each unfortunately seemingly as big and as complex as the other. But well before the pandemic began, USAID had been partnering with the government of India, the private sector, civil society to strengthen the impact, reach, affordability, and quality of health services in India. So this strong foundation of collaboration and trust really allowed us to be more creative and flexible as we face the unprecedented scope and complexity of the pandemic. So, but as we recognize the enormity of these challenges, we must also recognize the rich potential of new solutions. So together we realized that traditional sources of solutions through public and philanthropic funds alone would not be enough, and bringing to bear new innovations and ways of thinking was truly essential. We needed to create the conditions which allow for commercial investments in ways that benefit us all and allow for greater systemic reform as well. And we were fortunate to work with a committed government dedicated to reaching everyone, including the most vulnerable. So then as the pandemic began, USAID and our partners recognized the need to engage India's startup ecosystem, the world's largest, as other speakers have already mentioned, with 4,500 startups in health tech industry alone. And many startups struggle to scale due to lack of access to appropriate capital. And moreover, private investors will often hesitant to fund projects in this domain, owing to its volatile and unpredictable environment. So with the vast experience of innovative financing in India, USAID recognized this as a unique opportunity for our partnership for affordable health access and longevity, or PAHAL program, to develop, as Mr. Singh mentioned, to develop a blended finance approach, combining public and philanthropic funds with commercial capital for innovative solutions. In 2020, USAID collaborated with IPE Global and stakeholders from the Indian government, academia, and the private sector to develop this innovative blended finance facility and to not only bring commercial capital, but to create and scale market-based health solutions. So thus the SAMRIDH initiative was created to improve healthcare services for India's most vulnerable populations. The solutions developed by SAMRIDH can be scaled rapidly to meet the challenges posed by the pandemic. And notably, SAMRIDH has leveraged more than $50 million, more than 10 times its initial investments, through high impact solutions like temperature controlled shipping containers, mobile health units, and creative awareness campaigns. SAMRIDH's initiative have reached over 900 healthcare facilities, more than 11,000 medical staff, and over 20 million people. And they've also increased training for healthcare workers and numbers of ICU beds. It is abundantly clear to anyone watching India over the decades that it has many great minds, some of whom are currently spearheading the country's response to the pandemic with vast expertise and perseverance. So I'm so happy to be sharing this virtual stage with some of these great minds from NITI Aayog today, and also with our fantastic implementer, IPE Global. So I congratulate NITI Aayog's Atal Innovation Mission and SAMRIDH, which will supercharge our collective efforts to meet the needs of India's most vulnerable. To reach underserved populations, I understand that the partnership will focus on improving access to affordable and quality healthcare for vulnerable populations in Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities and rural and tribal regions. So SAMRIDH will greatly benefit from NITI Aayog and Atal Innovation Mission's experience and expertise in innovation and entrepreneurship. So by working together, we will also develop best practices, lessons learned, and seek opportunities for any necessary policy changes to help keep improving how we deliver healthcare solutions. So today, as we call for proposals from innovators and entrepreneurs, particularly women-led enterprises across India, I'm hopeful that our collaboration will bring a long-lasting impact to India's health sector. And we are confident that SAMRIDH will not only inspire more creative private players, as well as traditional funding agencies to invest in efforts that bring the possibility of both social and financial returns. And really, a more healthy population will be better able to take advantage of emerging economic opportunities and contribute productively to India's continued growth. So thank you all again to the speakers and all the guests who've joined today, and special thanks to IPE Global and project partners from PAHAL for their commitment to this important initiative. Dhanyavad, thank you.
Thank you very much, Veena, for that address. I can say from the vantage point of the from the Atal Innovation Mission that healthcare for blended finance may just be the beginning. So there are other sectors in the pipeline which may present similar opportunities. So we look forward to all of that and look forward to working together. With that, I think we're going to move to the next phase of this conversation. I'm going to hand it over to Anisha, who's also online, to take us through the white paper launch. Over to you, Anisha.
I would like to thank all our distinguished speakers for their comments. And moving on to our next section, the launch of the white paper, I would request the dignitaries to hold the white paper and officially launch it.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I will now request the SAMRIDH team to take us over the presentation on the white paper. Please go ahead. I would request somebody from the SAMRIDH team to take us over the presentation. Thank you so much.
Hello.
Yeah. Now, can you hear? Is she audible now?
Yes,
Can you
yes.
hear us, Anisha?
Yeah.
No, it's okay.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Arjita Adlakha from the SAMRIDH Healthcare and Blended Finance team, housed at IPE Global. We are thrilled to bring to you the white paper titled Reimagining Healthcare in India through Blended Finance, which has been prepared in collaboration with NITI Aayog, the Atal Innovation Mission, the United States Agency for International Development, and IPE Global as the technical support unit for the SAMRIDH project. Blended finance has been increasingly discussed among development practitioners for over a decade and now has found its way into development policies and strategies as one of the possible means to leverage public, private, and philanthropic resources to achieve development outcomes and forge ahead towards achieving the SDG goals. Recent estimates indicate a need for investments worth $2.6 trillion till 2030 to achieve the SDGs in India. The devastation caused by the COVID-19 pandemic has also amplified the need for new age health solutions and innovations to promote increased healthcare capacity and infrastructure. This brings us the opportunity to capture the essence and importance of blended finance, a crucial tool for promoting multi-stakeholder partnerships to strengthen the overall health system in India. The timing for the launch of this white paper could not have been better, since in the latest Union Budget, the Finance Ministry has also recognized the importance of creating thematic funds focused on blended finance mechanisms and dedicated towards high-impact sectors such as healthcare. To commence the proceedings, I would like to begin by sharing the broad contours of this white paper. The slide indicates the contents which have been covered in great detail within the white paper. At the launch here today, we will be giving you a brief overview of the blended finance concepts, demonstrate its need and use to strengthen the health ecosystem by enabling access to affordable capital for health innovations to reach scale, and also showcase one of the 5 case studies to enable mutual learning and understanding. We also give a brief overview of some of the recommendations and key takeaways to build the way forward. So blended finance can be described as the strategic use of concessional and private capital in projects where the perceived risks for private players are perceived to be high for them to participate alone. Blended finance can drive significant new capital flows into high-impact sectors like healthcare, while leveraging private sector expertise to identify and execute developed investment strategies. The 3 pillars of blended finance are leverage, which refers to the use of development finance and philanthropic funds to attract private capital; impact, which indicates the investments being made to drive social, environmental, and economic progress; and third being the returns, which are expected by the private players based on the risk-return profiles for these investments. The Indian healthcare ecosystem comprises of various subsectors. However, time and again, we witness the overall ecosystem being characterized by inadequate infrastructure, gaps in availability and distribution of health workforce. There is also an acute shortage of equipment, especially in terms of specialized care. And lastly, there lies a huge dependence on medical device imports across the country. While many government initiatives have been underway to transform the Indian health system, the disruptions triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic have amplified these gaps. But at the same time, they bring an opportunity to accelerate the efforts towards strengthening the country's health infrastructure. India is home to close to 4,500 startups registered in the health and technology domain, representing the immense potential for innovative, sustainable, and scalable healthcare technology to improve the lives of our citizens. Blended finance can facilitate these market-driven, high-impact solutions by creating viable business models that can penetrate in the most vulnerable sections of society through appropriate risk mitigation measures and subsidization of commercial capital. The blended model can also help leverage public and philanthropic capital to mobilize great participation from the private sector to fill funding gaps across the health system. While over the last few years, blended finance has seen some early momentum in India, to SAMRIDH, it is being created for the first time at scale and is intended to address the COVID-19 public health emergency and also build the overall health ecosystem resilience in the long run. While enabling a few transactions within the SAMRIDH portfolio, key observations and learnings have observed, which will be showcased through a case study. There are 5 case studies in the white paper. However, we will be showing one of these for now. Platform Technologies is a new age technology company with their patented product, Embolio, a portable active cooling device which is being used for the last mile delivery of COVID-19 vaccines across the country. The healthcare enterprise represents a great opportunity for this innovative product to reach the heightened demand for servicing the vaccine delivery across all locations in the country. Further, the enterprise also displays a need for availing commercial capital for increasing its manufacturing capability and expand in other geographical locations. So in order to structure this particular transaction, the blended finance facility at SAMRIDH has utilized 3 blended financing instruments which comprise of a partial risk guarantee, which is being used to offer a risk mitigation measure to enable access to commercial capital and also offer some comfort to the private lenders. Second being the interest subvention, which is being used to enhance the loan servicing capability of the enterprise, which is going to be demonstrated while achieving the social impact. And third being the returnable grant, which is supporting the growth and expansion of the enterprise, and it could be thought of as a zero interest loan payable in 3 installments over a period of 18 months. Now, coming to the 3 pillars of blended finance, we see that in this particular transaction, the entity was able to realize an actual leverage of 2x over and above the philanthropic capital, which was supported through a partial risk guarantee. We also estimate the leverage of around 3 to 5x over and above the philanthropic capital being contributed as a returnable grant. In terms of the returns, we see that the commercial players who have taken part in this transaction are earning close to 15% interest per annum. We also see that the entity is able to improve their profitability by 10% based on the achievement of social outcomes and through the interest subvention measures. There is also a very high social return on philanthropic capital using this funding. In terms of the expected impact, we see that there has been an increased access to COVID-19 vaccines across Tier 2 and Tier 3 locations within the country. We also noticed that there has been reduction in terms of the vaccine wastage due to the temperature excursions. And lastly, we also see that with the development capital that's flown in, there is an increased on-ground development impact, which is penetrating across all the last-mile beneficiaries. While structuring and implementing multiple blended finance transactions under SAMRIDH and also leveraging additional resources from the private sector, numerous learnings have emerged which can support the case for blended finance to become more focused and streamlined. So I would like to walk you through some of the recommendations and key takeaways here. First being, blended finance should be strategically used to develop the domestic market systems and also build the capacity of the local capital markets to augment investments towards development. In terms of going beyond bespoke models, we see that the application of these instruments, the stakeholders involved, they need to go beyond these bespoke structures towards larger risk-sharing agreements and create awareness about this new asset class with low risk adjusted return and some capital loss protection from the philanthropic resources. Third, we see the creation of marketplaces where these innovative financing structures can be listed, involving participation from a greater pool of private investors. Listing development impact bonds, social impact bonds on a social stock exchange is an example of many. The blended finance solutions should also be able to reach the last mile beneficiaries, which are aligned with the development goal. Incorporated blended finance mechanisms into coordinated multilateral crisis response towards sustainable development plans and align with the national priorities within the country. Lastly, blended finance projects should promote multi-stakeholder collaborations and enhance the knowledge sharing for these market-ready models to reduce the time involved in structuring these investments. We hope the white paper is a valuable read and it creates a ripple effect to maximize the reach of blended finance across the country. Thank you so much. Over to you, Anisha.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Archita, for the presentation. Now, before we move forward, we would like to play a video about the entire. We would like to play a video, and then we will move on to the launch for the call for proposals.
We only see a dark screen, Anisha, just in case you're projecting something.
So we're just playing the video. Just give us a minute. Yeah. I think there is some connection issue. I would request Archita if you could share your screen and play the video instead. Thank you.
In response to COVID-19 pandemic, when countries saw the rollout of world's largest vaccination program, SAMRIDH helped us scale in limited time. We doubled our production and increased our capacities thrice. Further, SAMRIDH financing allowed us to expand in Hyderabad and be closer to India's one of the largest vaccine manufacturing hub. Using SAMRIDH's blended financing model, we were able to timely access affordable debt by combining credit enhancement instruments like partial risk guarantee and social success note. This unlocked the required capital for us at that time.
With the onset of the pandemic, there was a heightened need to have a more trained healthcare professionals out in the market. The opportunity of USAID-supported SAMRIDH came by Viproji Healthcare, and we partnered with USAID to see how we can train more of the healthcare professionals. Backed by the strength of the organization, it is initiatives like this which will ensure that we have a better future for all of us.
We at Saral Designs are improving access to health and hygiene products using innovative product design and decentralized machine manufacturing. During COVID, we designed machines that were hybrid, which could produce both sanitary napkins and 3-ply surgical masks using the same technology. So far, we have produced more than 5 million masks and impacted the lives of 20,000 frontline workers. With the support from SAMRIDH, we have been able to increase our production capacity to 1 million masks every month. This has also helped us create employment opportunities in rural parts of India.
Underserved areas have a scarcity of medical staff and diagnostic services. We address this gap via an AI-enabled platform that reduces the cost of primary healthcare by up to 50%. We're currently doing 40,000 patient consults per month for 100 plus B2B customers in 15 plus states of India. Our impact includes up to 50% reduction in cost of primary care. This includes early detection and treatment of infectious disease like COVID. With help from SAMRIDH, we have deployed a COVID, cardiometabolic, and nutrition intervention in 4 states of India.
Through various disruptive means, GNRC is trying to bring down cost of healthcare so that large number of people in the community can avail these. At the moment, we have around 3,000 Swasthyamitras. We have created a workforce known as Swasthyamitras or health messenger. They are selected from amongst the community. They are mostly women. They go for house-to-house visit on a regular basis. During COVID pandemic, these Swasthyamitras, in addition to their normal work, were also instrumental in promoting COVID-appropriate behavior, addressing the issues of resistance to COVID vaccination. The SAMRIDH grant will help us to increase the Swasthamitra number by another 3,000. It will also help us to increase the number of ambulances by another 40 and increase the number of vehicles to transport patients by almost the similar numbers.
Thank you, Archita. Now we will move on to launching the call for proposals. I again request the SAMRIDH team to take over and walk us through the launch.
Just launching, don't launch for this. Just how long did it take? 5 minutes. 5 minutes launch. Now already we've got so many requests. I mean, they want the startups in India. Mind about it.
Good evening, everyone. So we are happy to announce the joint call for proposals from Indian innovators, startups, social enterprises which are working in healthcare. So the overview is we'll first give the details of the call. It is going live today. Then we'll show the thematic areas under which we are accepting the applications, the eligibility criteria for the businesses, and we'll walk through some of the steps, key steps to apply. It's an online application portal. We'll just walk through the steps. So the objectives of the call are to support scalable market solutions and to support India's COVID-19 response. And we also want to build health system solutions to make it more resilient and increase the preparedness capacity of India. So the period of application for round 1 is February 8th as of today, and it will go until April 30th. We'll be evaluating applications on an ongoing basis. We won't wait till April 30th. We will, as soon as it comes, we will start evaluating the startups and applicants. And we'll have the turnaround time is between 20 to 45 days. Next. So the thematic areas are, we want is the critical health system challenges. This is the first critical area where we cover healthcare infrastructure, capacity building, diagnostics, and IEC. Then innovative business, medical devices, which can be both artificial intelligence or machine learning based innovations or remote healthcare monitoring devices. Then those that build health systems resiliency, that goes beyond like supply chain logistics or increasing community-based management and referrals. And we also are usually aware of the epidemiological transition that India is experiencing. So we want to see innovations that can screen, diagnose, manage, and treat non-communicable diseases like diabetes, hypertension, chronic kidney disease, and obesity. And mental health is one of the neglected fields. So this call is also open to people who are working in the mental health space and who can deliver affordable and accessible interventions for promoting mental health, both either of the providers or of the patients and their families. Next slide. So the criteria for an organization to apply is they have to be registered in India. They should have at least 1 year of audited financial results. It can either be a for-profit entity or a non-profit entity. They should be commercially viable and they should have a substantial basis for scale-up. And the technology readiness that we look for is TRL 5 and above. That is proven and validated interventions which have already got the regulatory clearances and compliances. And those that want to scale up their operations, we want to fund those sort of entities. The operations we are looking this call for proposals will focus on operational expenditures and not on capital expenditures. And we are we are encouraging women entrepreneurs and others will be prioritized in this round. Next slide. So the way is to go to our website, samridhealth.org. And there is either you can go to the call for proposals or on the right, the other arrow, it will be the partnership with AIM. You can, next slide. Partnership with Atal Innovation Mission web page is there. Once you go there, you will see the details of the call and there's an apply for funding link. You can click. Then you need to create a user account. User account is very easy. Next slide. You just have to give your you have to give your username and password, and then once you log in, it will ask you to create a profile. Can you go to the next slide? So once you complete your profile, then you can start the application. Next slide. So once the application is open, the circle, there is a file for you to download that gives the full the technical details of the RFP call for proposals, and also the service agreement that the entity would be entering with IPA Global. There's a template for the service agreement. You need to go through that, and then the application process has to be submitted online. And the first question is about are you applying under the NITI Atal Innovation Mission and SAMRIDH Partnership? When you click yes, and then you start the application process. It's very simple and very convenient. And once you submit the application, you will get a notification, and our team will contact you. And once the application is submitted, our team will work with you to see what sort of blended finance structure can be created. So, next slide. So this is the website link, and we encourage all the innovators, startups, and social enterprises to apply for this call. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Good initiative. Very good initiative.
Thank you, Dr. Manju.
To make it
We
successful.
will now open for the press to ask questions. Thank you, everyone. We will now open for the press to ask questions to AIM and SAMRIDH. We will have 5 minutes for the press Q&A, and then we will move on to the next section. I would request the press to kindly raise their hands, and we will take the questions accordingly. Yes, please go ahead, Vinena. Ms. Vinena, you will have to unmute yourself. You can type the question in the chat box and we will take the question from there in case there is some issue.
Yeah, hi. I would just like to ask the team that if they could elaborate a bit on what are like some of the prerequisites for initiating a blended finance transaction.
Ms. Vinena, you will have to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me now?
Sorry, please go ahead. There was a lag. So please go ahead. Yeah.
Sure, but can you hear me now?
Yeah. So,
yes, I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I believe the question is what are the prerequisites to see whether the solution can be turned into a blended finance or not, right?
Okay.
While we assess a particular solution, we see that whether the entity is in the early revenue or post revenue stage. Depending upon the stage of the entity, the solution can be defined. Right. So, for example, if the entity is in post revenue stage, the entity is a good fit for the commercial capital. Right. So there, the support in terms of grants will be limited, but more the support will be more in form of that which we enable through our support in form of depository guarantee through our lending partners. If the entity is in early stage of revenue and have not established the commercial viability, the dependency on grants will be higher. So there we will create blended fund instruments such as returnable grant where we are expecting entity to say turn profitable over a period of time. So depending upon the stage of the entity and the kind of solution and the commercial viability or the unit economics, we design the solution and in collaboration with the lending partner as well as the entity applying for the funding. Hope that answers. You'll get more details about the same in the white paper. So there is a blended finance framework we have defined. So any entity can see that and understand how we design this particular solution.
In case there are any further questions, I would request you all to type them in the chat box and we will take it offline. We are running a little short of time, so we will take a 5-minute break, after which we will reconvene for the panel discussion. Thank you so much, everyone.
Ms. Nikita Rao, if you can switch on your video. Also, Ms. Rita Satish and Shanti Mathur. Thank you so much. I can see you now, Dr. Nikita Rao. I can see Dr. Clinton as well. Ms. Shanti Mathur, if you can share your video once. Yeah, I can see Dr. Nita Rao, Ms. Rupa, Shanti Mathur. Chintan sir.
Okay.
Hello,
Can you hear
everyone.
us?
Now I would request Dr. Nita Rao to please, yeah, you're audible, sir. Yes, so I would like to request Dr. Nita Rao to please start the panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anisha. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to a very engaging, interesting session on the role of blended financing to support ready-to-scale market solutions and innovations in the Indian healthcare ecosystem. According to the State of the Blended Finance report, the financing gap to achieve sustainable development goals is estimated to be 2.5 trillion US dollars. And with the pandemic, it is now estimated to be an additional 1.7 trillion US dollars. The pandemic has exposed gaps and shortcomings in the entire healthcare ecosystem. And this is not only for India, but across countries around the globe. And we definitely need new age solutions to be able to enhance the capacity of the existing healthcare system to be able to respond to pandemic and other emerging healthcare threats. A lot of speakers earlier today mentioned about how India is a hub of innovation, how we come up with solutions that are relevant, that can be used. However, there is a lot of challenge to scale them up, and a lot of these challenges would be discussed by the panelists today. And some of them have already been spoken about, like access to commercial capital, whether it is market entry, whether it is market inefficiencies, or it is regulatory issues, and host of other issues that we'll be hearing today. At the same time, India offers a lot of opportunities. We have a vibrant private sector, vibrant commercial sector, and a very strong public healthcare system. India's unique accessibility, affordability, and quality challenges can only be addressed with high impact innovations and solutions. If we have high impact solutions that can be scaled up, we'll have immense impact across the entire nation for different sections of the population. And for this to happen, we definitely need to move beyond conventional healthcare funding. It has to be complemented with innovative financing means. And blended financing can drive new capital into healthcare while effectively leveraging the expertise that exists in the private sector to identify and implement developmental investment strategies. With that, I would like to introduce you to our esteemed panelists who are from the industry, have extensive experience of working in the healthcare sector, with entrepreneurs, with financial institutions, and who have first-hand knowledge of what works and what does not. So to introduce the panelists, We have Dr. Rakesh Sarwal, Additional Secretary, Health and Family Welfare, NITI Aayog. We have with us Dr. Chintan Vaishnav, Mission Director, Atal Innovation Mission. Ms. Rupa Satish, Country Head for Sustainable Banking and Corporate Social Responsibility, IndusInd Bank. And Ms. Shanti Mathur, who is the founder and CEO of Primidic, a social enterprise. So we'll start the panel discussion with Dr. Sarwal. Dr. Sarwal, given your extensive experience in public health policy, management, and planning, can you please share a view of the Indian healthcare landscape and how the pandemic has changed its contours? And at the same time, if you could also talk about the emerging trends and how they can be scaled up for a larger impact. Over to you,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Sarwal.
Thank you, Dr. Neeta. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So, esteemed panelists, colleagues, and friends, Veena Reddy from USAID and other colleagues from the USAID, I'm delighted to be a part of this panel and the distinguished panelists here to discuss this very important topic on the launch of SAMRIDH blended finance facility. In terms of the healthcare landscape, I think how I would like to present it, it is in the terms of the 5 building blocks of the healthcare system. And the COVID pandemic told us exactly what our strengths and weaknesses are and put dual challenges before us. One is that of the pandemic and the infectious and the communicable disease, the unique nature of it, the surprise element, and on the top of it, the existing challenges of communicable, non-communicable, infectious diseases, the mental health problems remain and in fact exaggerated because of the socio-economic challenges that this pandemic posed. So in terms of the health systems, I think we'll just go through them. Drugs and diagnostics are major 60% of our expenditure, out-of-pocket expenditure is on drugs. And they were really challenging. We still don't have a drug for COVID, and diagnostics were really at the forefront of our fight against COVID. So making drugs and diagnostics accessible, affordable, both for COVID, new infectious diseases, emerging challenges, as well as our traditional communicable and non-communicable diseases, I think remains the most challenge currently. And the health system needs to gear up for that. And that itself, each one of these presents an opportunity for our startups to give solutions which are affordable, which are accessible, which are market-oriented, and which are scalable. Second is the financial part of it. Currently, 3.5% of our GDP is spent on health. 1.3% of that is by government, center, and state. Rest all is out of pocket and private. So while each person spends around 2,000 rupees per annum on healthcare, if this was a prepayment, this was structured in a way that that there's a coordinated, managed care environment, then the quality of care, the efficiency of care, the outcomes could be much more, could be much better for the money that we spend. In the case of Bangladesh, which spends less than us, but has better health outcomes. And of course, other countries which have overtaken us of late in terms of their health outcomes. So managing finances, and that's where the blended facility and the market-based solutions present an opportunity. Where we're paying capacity, even the bottom of the pyramid and the lower half of the pyramid do pay something for the healthcare, but how to give it of high quality is a challenge. HR, the human resources, again, training, allied health workers, accessibility, distribution, for challenges remains an issue where internet-based training modules, innovative ways of upskilling, credits, CMEs, again, are opportunities for our startups to work into. Which, of course, is a huge area, which is a game changer. It's a force multiplier. And information technology, digital health mission does offer a roadmap for that. But how can we scale it up, both for wellness and rehabilitation and continuous care is really a challenge as both an opportunity. Lastly, governance, tying these loose ends together and weaving them into a system, into a health system approach which is coordinated, which is managed, which deals with, which gives both primary, secondary, and tertiary care, is again an opportunity and a gap in our current healthcare system. So this being the case, I think the opportunities presented and what was tried in this pandemic are really worth learning and really taking it up. Home-based care, the foremost of them is home-based care. We learned that this is a huge potential where people can be empowered, they can be networked, and a reference with a reference system, with a referral system for complications can really take care of the primary and the preventive part of the care. Telehealth, telemedicine. So telemedicine potential has now been largely known, and how is it that we can leverage this to bring continuum of care is again an opportunity. Mental health is an issue that has come to the fore for those who were otherwise also on the fringe or even normal because of unique challenges that lockdown have posed us. And attending to these mental health challenges, both by the allied health workers, the community, and the caregivers, is a huge opportunity. And lastly, logistics. How do we manage the availability and access of low-cost solutions in corners of the country, distant corners of the country, is something that the government has also been grappling with. So while a number of schemes have been announced, funding has been given, but 80% of our healthcare remains in the private sector, outpatient care. So, so this is both a challenge as an opportunity, and I think it is the right time. This decade can really make or mar India's ambitions to become a developed country if we're able to address these healthcare challenges and bring out an efficient system for our country. Not only will we be building a bright future, but also become a leader, global leader in how to deliver low-cost, quality, and efficient healthcare to distant, remote corners of the country. So I think those are the broad areas where we can work on, Dr. Neeta and other colleagues.
Thank you, Dr. Sarwal, for those insights, especially highlighting the role that innovation, social enterprises can play to fast-track health reforms, and all of the areas that you mentioned in the healthcare system across the 5 pillars. It makes perfect sense. Now moving on to Dr. Chintan. You have closely worked with healthcare startups and innovations, and you are committed to finding solutions for the most intractable problems. So what are some of the pain points in the healthcare ecosystem that restrict the growth of the sector, particularly in terms of scaling new ideas and innovations? And given that we are now coming together for this launch, what do you think, some of the things that Atal Innovation Mission and SAMRIDH could achieve together in terms of strengthening the healthcare ecosystem?
Thank you very much, Dr. Neeta, and all the other friends on this call. Let me start with the good news. The good news is that if you look at our innovation landscape, healthcare is one sector where the ecosystem is coming together and faster than other sectors. So, of course, our road is long. And I'll say more about that. But we started at Atal Innovation Mission over the past few months. We have done several exercises to map innovation ecosystems at the national level, at a sector level, at state level, around individual incubators, and so on. And healthcare work is the furthest along of all of this. And what we see is that in healthcare, there are more boxes checked if you look at the ecosystem. So let me also define what I mean by the ecosystem, because that word also gets used quite a bit. So we think of this innovation ecosystem as those actors and functions or activities and their interdependencies that must be present for an idea to become an enterprise. So if you look at it from that perspective, as to in which sector an idea would face less friction to becoming an enterprise. Then I think healthcare, even though with all of its gaps, is still ahead of other sectors. That's sort of a mixed news. It's a good news and a bad news in some sense. But some of the challenges that are there here are, first of all, again, the good thing there is that healthcare innovations, you would see that if you look at innovation competitions all over the world, and you see which sector won the first prize for those competitions that were sector agnostic, you will see that healthcare ideas won the most number of first prizes. The reason it's easier to see that this idea deserves some money because most of us experience healthcare problems, if not personally, then through somebody you know, right? So that's attracting people to this sector. But that said, healthcare ideas have in some ways greater responsibility, right? You have to be very rigorous about proving it. That takes long time. That takes more money. Because it's about life. A lot of other ideas, for instance, an IT idea have failed, who cares, right? I mean, depending on what the app is doing. But so the gestation period is one major challenge. The amount of funding needed to sort of prove the idea is a major challenge. And the time it takes as a result of this is also a major challenge in healthcare. I'll give you a couple of very extreme examples. We heard in the union budget, for example, that there's going to be blended finance for deep tech. So let me define deep tech also as I see it, because again, that term gets used in many contexts. To me, a deep tech is a solution which is based in science or technology, but the process of producing that solution that process has produced at least some new knowledge. So there has been some major turn in our understanding based on our understanding of science and technology to get there. For example, we have a startup called Lamara. Lamara is in its 10th year, recently funded by Biocon. They have produced thermostable insulin to make insulin-based drugs at room temperature or in that range, so you don't need a cold chain. That's a huge deal, right? It has taken them 10 years to even proof of concept. But if we really go with that type of deep tech, we will need a lot more capital and patience to prove such ideas. But when they're proved, they will have enormous impact on how these supply chains of drug delivery works. Now, such ideas, how do we fund such ideas? These ideas are beginning to emerge. Okay, that's again in our ecosystem. How do we fund such ideas? I think at least we can begin with smaller steps like blended finance that we have started today, right? And we'll take bigger steps as life goes on. I must say that recently, this year, again, as a recognition of this moving and advancing ecosystem, we were able to produce a coffee table book of 45 healthcare ideas from Atal Innovation Mission. When we published it, a medical school from Australia called us and they said they want to collaborate with us. And I said, what is it that we can do that you can't do? Why should we collaborate? And they said, well, your innovators can think affordability, ours can't. That is, right? It was it was eye-opening for me. So I think these ideas like the one we are talking about today with AIM and IP Global and SAMRIDH has a tremendous potential to take us to those final frontiers, like the example I was giving. So let me stop there.
Thank you, Dr. Chintan, for so eloquently articulating the challenges in the healthcare ecosystem and so very clearly explaining, while there is a challenge, there is also an opportunity for healthcare innovations to move from idea to actually action. And very well said, it actually touches each and every life, and therefore it has so much of importance and significance, and there is a lot of more interest and support that comes for it. And as you rightly said, there are a lot of new innovations, examples that you gave of Lamara, but many more that can come, that is coming, that we are seeing in the horizon. And also for, very beautifully mentioning about how blended financing could help address some of them. It's not the only solution, but one of the solutions. Over to you, Ms. Rupa. You have over 30 years of experience in corporate banking and lending, CSR initiatives, and impact investing. How is blended financing catalyzing a shift in the quality of healthcare spending and in solving complex healthcare challenges?
Thank you. So continuing Dr. Chintan's line of thinking, he spoke about many challenges. I must say, as a banker, it's a favorite sector for all bankers. And I say that because mostly healthcare is, agnostic to economic cycles. So capital comes in quite easily and lending comes in very easily. But there is a catch. People want to lend into this sector once the enterprise has scaled up and demonstrated that it can make money, or it has the ability that it has put together a safe, secure, sustainable business model that can generate cash. Now, the problem that happens for the host of startups and innovators that we are seeing is that, like we rightly said, it takes a lot of money and investment and time and long gestation for creating this kind of a foolproof concept. So they run to equity. Now, equity is diluting. So during the startup stage, how much of equity can an enterprise raise? There is a limit to that. And then they go to grant taking. Now, grant taking also, you can take it once, you can take it twice, but it will dry up. So I'm urging all business, entrepreneurs and innovators to try and create sustainable and profitable enterprises where it is very clear to the financier that there is potential in this entity. When it scales up, it will start making profits. Then such entities are very nicely suitable for blended finance, because all we have to do is manage that transition period. Because if there is no light at the end of the tunnel, then even blended financing will not come in. So it is very important to understand that, that it's not for all startups it will work. It will work for startups who have been diligent and who have worked out a very nice business model, which only needs financial support for the initial, phasing up or the scaling up of the project. And to be, for listeners, just to give some specific example to bring home the point. For example, with USAID, we have this, this participation blended finance structure. We've committed close to $40 million for this specific SAMRIDH initiative. So what are we trying to achieve here? We are saying that if we are coming together, if USAID is providing a grant and is making that particular healthcare unit a little more, financially secure to test its products and launch its products, and also clear 1 or 2 years, and the bank can support thereafter using this initial support or grant that USAID has given, we can then provide non-dilutive loans. They are not equity, they are debt. So it's non-dilutive. It is not very high cost as one can get from, NBFCs or impact funds or venture funds, which is at 18 and 24%. So it's much lower cost because the bank is coming in. But the bank needs some kind of a risk protection which is coming in by grant that is provided, or it is coming in a partnership where a first loss guarantee is given, taking care of some element of risk. And there are multiple structures and innovations possible in this space. There is no clear, one cannot just put a diagram out there and say this is the solution that will work for all. It can be structured, but the core thing is that the enterprise should have the potential to scale up at a future time. And then, of course, it has to have the ability, ideally, to sometimes even repay or give back the grant. Then grants will be even more forthcoming, because then that grant can be leveraged further and be channeled into further innovations. So we have done some things like that together, and it's an amazing opportunity by which you keep cycling that capital, and the impact that it can make becomes tremendous.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rupa, for sharing the experience of our work together and how blended financing cannot work if you do not have a good business model for the solution. And as you rightly said, that the grant could actually come in and provide that assurance, that risk capital for social enterprises to access further debt and be sustainable over the long run. Now over to you, Ms. Shanti. You are yourself an entrepreneur, and we know that women entrepreneurs account for less than 13% of India's small businesses. So in your experience, what are some of the key factors that inhibit women's entrepreneurial journey? And what specific assistance and advisory support should be provided to women entrepreneurs?
Thank you, Dr. Neeta. You have highlighted a very important point for discussion here. That is very low percentage of women entrepreneurs, like you mentioned, 13%. Definitely low, considering that we are 50% of the population, right? There are several reasons. A lot of analysis has gone into it, but some of the fundamental reasons are also the same as why women are, constitute a lower percentage of workforce even. Okay, so if you look at the percentage of women in the workforce in India, even before pandemic, we were something like 26% or plus, right? And after pandemic, I've come across statistics like as low as 16%. Okay, and naturally the reasons are basic, like the percentage of literacy in females is lower than males, first of all. But even if they qualify and get to a job, because of family and childcare reasons and things like that, the dropout rates are very high, and these are very basic reasons. If even holding on to a job is difficult for women, entrepreneurship is going to be far more tougher, right? So naturally it is lesser. But there are other reasons. If you look at it, the challenges of mobility within our country and, safety in public places. These kind of challenges inhibit us from taking on opportunities or roles, okay, that will involve travel in tier 3 towns or smaller places, okay, where this could be a problem. The other thing is the social attitude, which kind of people believe that women are suitable for certain kind of jobs and they're not suitable for other kind of jobs. Okay, so there's an example I would like to share which happened in our company. Primedec is an e-marketplace for buying, selling, and servicing medical equipment. So we help out a lot of hospitals in terms of maintaining the medical equipment, repair and maintenance. So one of our customers in the beginning, which is a maternity and NICU hospital, we had deployed a female biomedical engineer. So they said, we've never seen a female biomedical engineer. Can she do this? We went through with it and things like that. 2 years later, this young lady wanted to quit and we were looking for a replacement. The hospital themselves insisted that they want a female engineer. Why? Because she not only did an excellent job, but even the patients who are feeding mothers and, post-maternity patients, they were more comfortable having a female engineer for repairing, NICU equipment or other equipment in the ward, right? So, if given a chance, women can actually demonstrate that they can do a better job and, open the eyes of the society. But those chances come very, difficult. Now, coming back to why women entrepreneurs are less, okay, there are a few other reasons apart from just the job profile or the work profile, right? Things like networking and hiring people is a challenge for women. Even most women lack in financial management or business skills. So there's a lot of initiatives that I have seen which go into coaching and mentoring in some of these areas, which are very helpful. But the most hotly debated topic is about, we talked about blended financing here. The hotly debated topic is the gender bias that comes into financing, women-led ventures. And it's true. In, a few years back, I met with a potential investor who, we had a long discussion about our venture and things like that. And at the end of it, he said, it's all good, but it's going to be difficult because you have to be doing the business development, for your venture. I said, yeah, I do. I go and meet hospitals. Even smaller places like Tanuku in Andhra Pradesh or Payanur in Kerala and, Ramanathapuram in Tamil Nadu, I have gone, I've met hospitals and we've got business. But, he didn't say anything more, just shook his head as though, no matter what you do, it's going to be difficult for you. There's another advisor, who actually helped us a lot, as a thorough gentleman, who basically, gently asked me one time, is your husband going to join your venture later? So these kind of signals, kind of tell me that they don't have the confidence that no matter what you do, your venture is going to succeed. And I just want to share a kind of an analogy, which we keep coming across. We sell a lot of ultrasound machines, and we come across PNDT Act. So prenatal diagnostic technique is an act which prohibits sex determination in before childbirth, right? And the reason is India is infamous for female feticide. Okay, and I've often wondered why a parent would want to kill their own child even before birth, right? The reasons are very similar to why investors don't want to invest in a women-led venture, because they know that life is going to be very difficult for this girl child or for this woman if they take on this venture, and supporting this venture is probably not so profitable or, not worth the bother. Okay, that is
I think we lost you, Ms. Shanti.
Yeah, we lost Anita.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'll just take the time to also say that, with USAID on gender, since we are discussing, it was very interesting what Shanti was talking about, and I hope she comes back quickly. But just to keep the time, be conscious of the time, I'm very proud that, we are actually financing what she mentioned, supporting child and mother care in the healthcare, specific focus on child and mother care. Shanti is back, and so we can hear from her.
Yeah, thank you, Rupa, and welcome back, Shanti. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just finishing with my suggestions on what we could do. There are initiatives like NITI Aayog has started Women Entrepreneurship Program and the SAMRIDH in supporting women in terms of funding assistance, in terms of coaching and training in those areas that they need help. But there are two areas which I thought I could suggest here where we can help more. We often face problems in terms of collections itself. I mean, customers reneging on their payments and vendors taking the payment and not delivering on their promises. These are, I don't know whether it is true of other, issue. I mean, male led industry, but for sure, I feel that they take it like women can be taken it easily. But we have had a situation where there was complaint filed in police, and then we had to spend a lot of time and effort in coming out of it because we had solid documentation, we had done our job, but a lot of time wasted, money wasted, which I didn't have in terms of lawyers' fees and things like that. So if it can be made tougher for people to renege on payments and bouncing checks, etc., for women-led startups or women-led ventures, that would be protecting them from some of these problems. The other is, not only financial skills challenge, but I find that, even though you have an idea, for example, Dr. Chintan just talked about deep tech, right? I mean, we are talking about AI ML led a solution towards medical equipment access and purchase, etc. And I do find a challenge in terms of developing that tech. I may have an idea, very clear idea of how that is going to help the user, but the technical inputs, technology inputs is something that, specifically, I think maybe many women entrepreneurs could, want. And that is another area that initiatives could help women entrepreneurs. Yeah, so many challenges, but I think I just would like to stop with a couple of suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shanti, and special thanks for sharing your own experience, your own journey, and how, whether it is financial management, whether it is taking knowledge or concepts into actual action, whether it is getting that kind of support from the society, or it's the basic gender bias. I think all of it makes sense, and as we work towards this initiative, we would be mindful about all these points that you mentioned, especially in terms of providing mentoring support and other handholding support, especially what you mentioned in terms of collection. So just very quickly, Rupa, we are running out of time, but we definitely want to hear from you that you have formulated the ESG lending policy for the bank. So based on what Ms. Shanti has mentioned just now, can you share your thoughts on gender lens investing?
Yeah, so in the way in which financiers look at gender lens investing is having two aspects. One is the woman entrepreneur herself, so supporting her, and then secondly, the nature of the impact that the institution is making. So it could be impacting women in society. So two different aspects really, and both come under ESG investing. Supporting women-owned enterprises or women-promoted enterprises, Shanti was passionate and very vocal in the challenges that a woman faces. I can say that I try to work closely with the government of India because SIDBI has many schemes in this place, and one can try to leverage some of the financing and some of the structures that SIDBI offers here. But I think some more flexibility in that area and some more focus would really be very useful. We have Atal Innovation Mission with us now. So hopefully, some of these things can be brainstormed and more impact created for lending to women entrepreneurs. For impacting, but here again, I must say that microfinance tells us an entirely different story, because in microfinance, we lend directly to women, and the success rate and the confidence of investors in backing women for livelihood support is tremendously high because of the self-help groups structure that microfinance inherently uses, where there is some kind of a social working together and social pressure. So maybe, one can, I don't know whether one can replicate that in other industries, but there are both use cases, I would say. On the impact in the society, I think it's very far-reaching and very indirect, one can say, when we look at impact measurement in ESG, and we look at women-led companies and women supporting enterprises. When we come to direct impact, it's very easy to measure. But when we are looking at the indirect social impact, it is so far-reaching and so wide that sometimes it is very difficult to capture on paper. And so greater sensitivity to this, because it impacts education, it impacts livelihood, it impacts the culture of the society, it impacts in so many areas when you finance and support a woman to be financially independent. So I think greater sensitivity will do everyone good.
Thank you, Rupa, for that. I know we are running out of time, so we'll quickly jump into some questions that we have from the audience. Dr. Chintan, this question is for you. Can you elaborate on what key policy changes are required to create an enabling environment for innovations and startups to work with the government?
I think one of the major ones is procurement. For example, Atal New India Challenge, which is the program within Atal Innovation Mission, is the one that's also doing this partnership that we are talking about today. See, here we launch challenges that are submitted by ministries of the government. And then we run our challenge, national challenge, and some wonderful solutions come and we nurture them for 12 to 18 months to take them to a stage where they are, investable and all of that. Now, such a challenge would work only if government procures these solutions or begins by procuring these solutions. The reason is that necessarily because of the role of the government, the challenges that a ministry would submit are going to be in the area of a market failure or an institutional failure. Therefore, there is a government intervention needed. Otherwise, why would you need it? And so, when somebody comes up with a solution for which there is no market, who has the market? And so the procurement is one major nut to crack. In terms of financing is big area, but we were just talking earlier. For instance, if say some form of financing like CSR, etc., can begin to, some part of it can go towards innovations. That would be big, right? Maybe let me stop there. Those two can consume us for quite some time.
Thank you, Dr. Chintan. Yeah, I mean it's a wide area, and we very aptly picked up the most important one being the procurement issues. So going on to Rupa, this question is for you. For a blended finance point of view, do you foresee trust societies being able to take advantage of the affordable capital as they are not so much amenable to debt? Sorry, was I audible?
Somebody wanted to say something. Is that okay?
Should I repeat the question for you, Rupa?
No, I heard it.
Okay.
Will trust structure be amenable? I think it should also work out because, we do finance education a lot as a sector, which is more structured with trusts. The only thing is the trust deed, etc., needs to be, allowing the same. And it should be possible. It depends upon the entire business. If it is sitting with the trust, it may be difficult. But normally in the education sector, what they do is they have the trust as well as another enterprise coming together and delivering the education service. So if some structure like that is possible, it's easy.
Thank you, Rupa, for that. Ms. Shanti, there's a question for you saying that, asking that now that you know that there are these opportunities, is there anything that you would have done differently when you started out?
Yes. Yeah, I think awareness about the various programs comes in different stages. One of the areas that we wanted, our focus was on tier 3, small and medium hospitals in tier 3 locations. But we started with buying and selling. But I think we could have used an opportunity for some of these financing in terms of selling our services, that is biomedical equipment services, and upskilling. And the challenge there was the skills for engineers required in those areas, and because of that we didn't start with that. But we could, if we could deploy finances like this for skilling those people, we could have probably brought that forward before. And now I think we will be doing that. We are doing that. Yeah.
Thank you. So very much you appreciate the value of the technical assistance that comes along with these kind of initiatives, right?
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Dr. Chintan, there's one more question for you. I mean, there are many, but we just, in the interest of time, we have to pick up few. What are some of the activities that Atal Innovation and SAMRIDH can do to address the challenges for the early and mid-stage entrepreneurs in raising capital for validation studies, specifically for validation studies?
That's an interesting question. So one of the arms of Atal Innovation Mission looks at strategic partnerships, and the meaning of the word strategic in that phrase is that we look for gaps where partnerships can be created. Right? I think this question speaks to a gap where is there a way that we can create partnerships which would facilitate validation with the right kind of facility, know-how, as well as in some affordable way. And I think we can do that. I mean, being in for instance, one of our own Atal Incubation Center is at CCMB in Hyderabad. Or there's another Atal Incubation Center which is in Andhra Pradesh MedTech Zone, which has, for instance, certification facilities of the highest order, and so on. We can talk to other government laboratories. For instance, we are talking to 6 city clusters, each of which has 40 odd research institutions each, and one is trying to put them together. Maybe a lot of that laboratory base can be opened up to those who need it. So maybe this is an idea. This question is an idea for us.
Absolutely, absolutely, Dr. Chintan. I think, yeah, it actually opens the door for so many partnership opportunities. And I know we are short of time, so I just don't want to take a lot of time. This has been a very insightful and very interesting panel discussion for me, at least. I'm sure the audience have also enjoyed listening to you. And we have a lot of takeaways from this as well. As you mentioned, Dr. Chintan, the last question was actually an idea for us to take forward. And also what Rupa, Dr. Sarwal, and Ms. Shanti, you mentioned in terms of mentoring support and looking at trust and society. So I think, a lot of inputs that we have got. Leading the effort on SAMRIDH from USAID side, I can confidently state that it has taken many partnership initiatives for us to reach at this stage where we are. Some of these partnerships worked, some of them did not work, but each of them offered immense learning for us. And we definitely look forward to this partnership with Atal Innovation Mission, NITI Aayog, and all the other partners who are already there with us towards accelerating the impact of this initiative for strengthening healthcare ecosystem and ultimately improving lives of the most vulnerable population. I definitely want everyone who is participating in this to visit the SAMRIDH website, and those who are interested to please apply for the call for proposals that was shared earlier today. And I now request Dr. Chintan to provide the vote of thanks. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. First of all, let me say thank you, Dr. Neeta, for moderating this panel so efficiently and interestingly. I certainly have to say I learned quite a bit from responses of everybody. So thanks a lot. Let me also say thank you to Ashwajit ji, IP Global's team, the USAID team at SAMRIDH with Ms. Veena, and thank you to other panelists on this call. I have to say, every time there's an entrepreneur and a banker on a panel, I always learn something new. Even after so many months of being at Atal Innovation Mission. So thank you so much, Rupa and let me see, Shanti. Also, thank you to our teams on both sides. Atal Innovation Mission team, where Anisha, Anisha, Sumaya, let's see, at the very right time, I have trouble remembering names, but I will be with you in a moment. And Rohan, I'm so sorry. So I speak to him every day, but these people worked very, very hard. Of course, there are other team members who I can't name everybody for paucity of the time, but also Dr. Hafsa, Dr. Sarbal and team, we all worked very hard. On the IPE global side, Himanshu Sikka was consistently in touch with us in producing the white paper, Dr. Manjunath, Archish, and Arjita as well. So thanks everybody. This has been a very fun and successful launch, and we have our work cut out. And Dr. Veena, Miss Veena Reddy, there you go. You're still here. Okay, namaste. Thanks a lot. So I think that brings us to the end of this session. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.